Hello, everybody. I guess it's 1 o'clock, so we're going to get started. I hope you had a good morning session, or 2 morning sessions already, and you're enjoying JNUX so far. The idea behind my session is that there's a lot of organizations out there that are using Jamf already for their macOS, but haven't really got into the iOS side yet. And also, there are a couple of organizations out there that haven't even started with Jamf. So I think it's a really easy or good point to start when you start with the iOS side instead of the Mac side. I'm Felix. I work for Jamf. To be precise, I work in the Netherlands in our Amsterdam office for the last 13 years. And my job right now, or my team, we're working on the Apple retail relationship within Europe, and we're also helping out with the Apple Consultant Network from time to time when there's need. Today's agenda, we're going to take a quick overview about Jamf and what the offering is and what our portfolio is. We're going to look at the recap, so we all have the same basics, same foundation to start with. So if you're already managing Mac, there's some things you probably know that the people who don't use Jamf yet don't know. I just want to get that evened out. I'm going to then actually get into the session objective and also into the preparing to add your iOS devices before we go to takeaways. So naming convention changed throughout the last couple of years, and some people might not know what it actually means behind it. So Jamf for Mac actually includes Jamf Pro, Jamf Protect, Jamf Connect, and then when we add Jamf for mobile, that works, we also get Jamf Pro, Connect, Protect, Security Cloud, and also Android Manager. You might have heard about that. And the last one we're going to offer is Jamf for K-12, which is Jamf School. So a different platform, not Jamf Pro in this case, also having security portal in it, and we're going to have Jamf Safe Internet instead of the whole security cloud. How does it look like when we look at the portfolio itself? You could see it in 3 categories, managed, secure, and industries. That's how I place it most of the times when I talk about it. We get the managed side with Pro, with the Android Manager, and with School. We got the secure side with Connect, Protect, and Safe Internet for education. And then in the industry, you saw in the State of the Union and also Apple itself talking about return to service. We got setup and reset, so special things for education, healthcare, and retail. 2 things I didn't mention at all yet, but you see on the slide is Jamf Now, which is a separate product for the SMB side that you have to purchase separately. And also Jamf Executive Threat Protection, so JETP, is a different product that you buy separately. Obviously, we're not going to go over them now, but you see them on the slide, so I thought I'd just mention them quickly. And they're not part of Jamf for mobile or Jamf for Mac, for example. So, basics. When we look at adding the iOS devices into Jamf Pro, from my perspective, we should have a lot of automation in it so that you don't have to come back daily or weekly and add new things to it. You want to use your smart groups, you want to use your static groups and automate as much as possible. And if you're doing it on the Mac side, you probably already know a lot of these things. And that makes it even easier to add with your iOS devices. So we want to purchase from either Apple Retail or authorized reseller so that we see our devices in Apple Business Manager, or precisely their serial number. We don't want end users to manually add the devices to Jamf Pro, go through the whole process. It's just tedious and it's not much fun. So having the devices or their serial number in Apple Business Manager right after purchasing also gives us the possibility to have them in Jamf Pro right away. And when they're in Jamf Pro right away, IT does not need to enter the device, does not need to add the device to a certain group. We can automate that again with our smart groups. And we get the option that IT doesn't even need to interact with setting up the device. It's really nice. IT can do something else, can be on holiday, or actually do other tasks and have the end user do it. So Apple Business Manager, key for automation, and obviously then you need the right purchasing route. If we continue on the Apple Business Manager side, and especially for the iOS side, you're going to see something in the left corner called supervision or a supervised device, which gives you ownership, institutional ownership over the device. I would say puts another layer there for more control and more options. And you only get it with Apple Business Manager. There is Apple Configurator, but it doesn't give you the same automation again. You have to touch the device, and actually it just brings the device into Apple Business Manager again. So from our perspective, you purchase the devices at the right reseller, you get your MDM ready, you get your Apple Business Manager ready, and your iOS device will be supervised for more control and more possibilities. So then the MDM profile, for example, is locked on the device, and you cannot remove it as an end user. These 4 points we're going to take a look at with the next couple slides. So differences between macOS and iOS. If you're already managing, that's really nice to know that there are still some differences, even though we can set up things that you don't have to reset up when you just start using iOS. Yeah. So in Jamf Pro, when you're using your Mac estate, you're going to be either really busy with blueprints or with scripting. In iOS or on the iOS side, there's no option for scripting, so we are heavily relying on configuration profiles, so the MDM part right now. And if you listen today, obviously that's going away at some point. So then the next thing will be blueprints, the DDM part of the whole system. So yeah, get used to ignore scripting, which hopefully is nice, and get more into blueprints. We also don't have the option for PKGs or DMGs like you have it in macOS, where you can add a post script or some post installations to a PKG. Everything will be deployed from the App Store, from Apple Business Manager. We get it into details later, or from your in-house apps that you configured yourself and you uploaded to Jamf. But no DMGs, no PKGs. We do also have the option for customized app in your App Store. So if you have a developer that develops just an app just for your company, we could actually add that also to your Apple Business Manager. Difference in customization for Setup Assistant. You cannot play a video or a game while you're setting up an iOS device like you could with Splunk, for example, on a macOS. And we also have a different user setup, because if we take shared iPad away or out of the equation right now, then you don't have really a user on an iOS device. You don't need a username. You don't really have a password. You could use your IDP, obviously, but in general, you just have a PIN that you enter during the Setup Assistant. So think different in the case of users on the iOS device. So how does it look like when we start adding our devices and our configurations and our setups in Jamf Pro? This is the list of MDM commands, so configuration profiles, long list, but it has everything that we need right now, from setting up your email, setting up fonts if you want special fonts with your keynotes, restrictions. All of this is part of Jamf Pro. You don't have policies like you have in macOS, and therefore we're staying focused on these configuration profiles. And then if we go to the DDM side, and you've seen that in the keynote, we're going to focus on blueprints. The nice part about the blueprints is once you configure them, you just drag and drop. You search, we see that as well, and then you just drag and drop, and your configuration is done. Also really nice is the way of updating things here. So if you want to just change the conference room display settings, it's just again on the top to deploy, and we are ready with that as well. Pre-stage settings. For the iOS side, I just took some screenshots here. We have options where we can say we want the naming convention, because again, we don't have a user that when you have your macOS, obviously you get Felix macOS or MacBook Pro. Here we can have a list already ready based on serial number, based on names that you want to provide, and have your device named like that during the Setup Assistant. When we continue, we have another couple options that we want to take care of. For example, prevent users from enabling activation lock for some reason, if you don't want that. We can here also, which I in the beginning said we're not going to take a look at, make the device shared iPad. So if you're in a retail environment, in a hospital, or in schools, you can here enable the shared iPad feature where you then need your managed Apple ID to get into the device, and you get your device configured per person, logging in, logging out. We also can now prevent from unenrollment, so the MDM profile has to be on the device and end users cannot remove it. So all these nice pre-stage settings you set up once, and then we can keep it that way for every additional device you add. You can also skip some steps. So as you can see here, I'm skipping Siri, Apple ID or Apple account, terms and condition, and so on and so on. To make the setup way easier, way faster. Maybe we have the restriction in the company that we don't want Apple IDs on the device so people cannot make backups to iClouds or install their own Apple apps. So we're just going to prohibit setting that up. Maybe also some older employees don't even have an Apple ID, so we're just going to skip it. An important point, location services. I would not skip that, because otherwise, I mean, if you're based in California, you can skip it. But otherwise, you will always have Los Angeles as a time zone, especially for us in Europe, that's far away. So I would not recommend skipping that. Self-service, you see the old logo, and Katie English talked about the new Self-Service Plus coming out next year. So I just stick with the old one for now. But extremely handy when you're setting up your new devices. You have iOS devices, your company maybe needs 20 apps installed. You don't want all 20 apps to be installed during the setup system. It will just slow everything down. Also, your end user probably doesn't have an idea if they need all these 20 apps right away. So with self-service, we can just keep 10, 15 apps in self-service for the end user to install. The other 10 or 5, whatever we need, will be right away available and ready to use. But yeah, we got also configurations like Wi-Fi that we can store on self-service and make it way easier and faster to set up the devices. In schools, as an example, you can have PDFs and books in there, so teachers don't have to come to IT and be like, oh, next week I need this. It's all prepared right away, and whenever they need it and want it, they go and download it. So really, really good in time saving for not only IT, but also the end user. And obviously, we can then also have our IDP set up right away when you go into Apple, setting up your device. And then when you log into your new apps, you already recognized, you have your app configurations, everything set up, and the end user saves time again. Things that people who use macOS or Jamf Pro with macOS already have set up. So again, if you want to start adding and you are interested in testing out iOS, if you already use Jamf for Mac, you can basically skip all these steps besides maybe getting some apps in Apple Business Manager for the iOS side. For everybody who's new, we have to go through this once. You use your your Jamf ID. You get your APNS, your Apple Push Notification Service that we set up once. Obviously, we have to renew it every year. Then we're going to get our enrollments token from Apple Business Manager, our volume purchase token from Apple Business Manager, so we also have the connection there for the apps and the serial numbers that will be passed on to Jamf Pro. And then we're going to go into Apple Business Manager, and you see that under the Device tab is where you then actually assign the devices to your MDM server. And so now also next to your macOS devices, your iOS devices will show up in Jamf Pro. And you see the devices before they have been turned on. So maybe you just purchased them, you're waiting for the new hire to start, somebody gets a new device maybe, an upgrade, and the device will already be shown in Jamf, even though it has not been unwrapped, unpacked, or used. And then the nice part is we just add it to marketing or support, and the device will receive all the configurations that's needed. So again, a time saver, only possible in combination with Apple Business Manager and smart groups. So really nice. This way we can also then, which I will get into in a second, make sure that all the devices under management assignment go right away into Jamf. You could also have your devices in 2 MDMs, obviously. Purchasing of apps. Again, a combination of Jamf Pro and Apple Business Manager. We get the app licenses in Apple Business Manager. So I just select the Apple Support app here for iOS. You say how many licenses you need. You can do that for free apps. You can do it for apps that cost. And when you purchase these apps, the licenses will stay in your company. So let's imagine Apple Support app would cost $5 per app, and you purchase 10 of them. Then these license costs will be paid by your company. But whenever somebody leaves the company or gets a new role assigned where they don't need the app, you can just revoke the app, retract the app, give it to the next person. And you don't have to repurchase it. Especially in education, going from group 9 to group 10. This is huge, that you don't have to repurchase every app for 20, 100 students, whatever, every year. Also really important, why do we get the licenses in Apple Business Manager? So we are not installing the app on an Apple ID base. We're going to install them device-based. Makes it also easy if you say, we don't need Apple IDs in the companies. We don't want it for some reason, maybe for retail installations and so on. So you can just ignore the Apple ID, no Apple ID on the device. Still, the app will install with Jamf and Apple Business Manager. It's pretty easy. Once we selected the amount of licenses we need, since we already have the token in Jamf Pro, it will then move the license count over to Jamf. And you can now get your last settings about the app configured and then deploy it to the people. You can do it device-based, you can do it group-based, whatever you want to do. And you can also see, you can immediately schedule your updates. If you say, hey, this app is critical and I want it up to date all the time, whenever an update comes out, you can force it, you can make it available and automate that again. We got some apps that use managed app config. For example, self-service does it or Outlook does it, and it gives us the option to pre-configure, pre-fill the app. So whenever the end user opens the app for the first time, they're already connected to the right server. You see their email address in there. They just need to put in their password. Again, saves time, saves IT tickets, because obviously people will not know what to do. They will call you up, be like, I don't know, I got a new app, I have no idea, help me. If you already configured it in Jamf Pro, they should be able to put in their password. A little step to Jamf Security Cloud. Jamf Security Cloud obviously is one of our portfolios where we now can configure everything we need in threat prevention, for example, where we can make sure that your devices are safe and that we prevent them from being phished. And whenever there's an attack, we can figure it out here already. We call it zero trust, what we want to achieve here. So it's really nice. If we look at the next slide already, we have 2 options. We can do this app-based or network-based. We can say, hey, this app might be harmful to us. We're just going to block it. Or whenever an app doesn't match what we think it should match, we can block it right away. Or we can also do it via the network. So we got 2 options, 2 layers. We can activate them both at the same time and have therefore, double protection in this case. Obviously, we can also go device-based and say, hey, we don't want you to jailbreak the device, obviously, and we want to make sure that everything on the device is safe. So have the activation via the device. We have some nice presets if we want to go via secure DNS and block adult websites, advertising websites, casinos, gambling, whatever you want. Everything in here also possible and really nicely to configure. We're not going, as you see, into details how to configure all of that. It's more like, hey, once you get our products, take a look at this, configure this, and then we can easily deploy it to your iOS site. We also have the option now with Trusted Access, which gives us the option of, hey, Jamf Pro is managing the device. Jamf Pro is installing the app. Now we need your IDP configured, and we got your IDP, and then you are actually allowed to use these certain apps that we put on this list where you need an IDP and you need a managed device and a managed app. All again in Security Cloud, and a nice combination where you can find all your settings here, and then Jamf Pro will actually enforce them. How do we get this automated again? Because obviously we don't want to set this up manually every time. So first of all, for the iOS side, we get the Jamf Trust app. In Apple Business Manager, we get the licenses, transfer them to Jamf Pro. Jamf Pro installs them on the devices. Next up, we get the activation profile, which we find in the enrollment section in Jamf Security Cloud, and upload this activation profile to Jamf via configuration profile and deploy it to all groups, again, via smart groups if you want to. And this can be automated as well, because we're going to have a connect page also in Jamf Security Cloud. And once we have the connect page connected with your Jamf instance, it's kind of cut off, but it says URL at the bottom, then we actually automate your activation profile, keep everything up to date, and when we need to redeploy it, we can do that with a smart group again. Shoot out to an interactive lab, which is later today, tomorrow and Thursday, where Lucy and Morgan are going to talk more about your mobile journey. So if you're interested to get hands-on and not just listening to us showing you some slides, feel free to join these interactive labs. Click too fast, I'm sorry. Our smart groups, I mentioned them throughout the whole presentation already. Smart groups are our most effective way to automate. If we want to get every device on iOS 16, if we want to make sure there are different rules per countries, and if you are entering this certain country, the rules will automatically be applied, that's all gone through smart groups. We should not underestimate, obviously, our static groups, because they get the devices into the right department from the beginning on, and they stay in there. And whenever you make changes to department configurations, they will also be deployed to the devices. But obviously, the smart groups are real nice and easy way to get your hands off Jamf Pro again once you have it configured. We also saw during the keynote Mike talking about API. And if you're using Mac on Jamf Pro already, then you're probably using some APIs already. But we also got the API for iOS. So platform API, as Mike talked about, does also include, obviously, the iOS side. So take a look there, go to GitHub, get some interesting features you want to deploy. So requirements, we always say at Jamf there are 3 steps, or there's no third step. I made 6, just doubled it. Anyways, for me, the requirements to get not only your iOS devices really easy and fast deployed, but also get everything set up. Don't skip steps, you see that at number 6, but get your business manager ready, exchange your tokens, make sure you got manage app config deployed to the app that can do it. Get your smart groups ready, and then you can roll out your security in your apps, and you're really fast done with iOS deployment. So you can see it's a good place to start if you have not started with Jamf Pro. Not as complex as macOS. So for key takeaways, should be 4, yeah. I think it's really effortless and quick to add your iOS devices compared to the Mac side. And obviously, no scripting, no DMGs, no PKGs, so less to configure. We can really easily achieve automation so that you don't have to get into Jamf Pro all the time and configure everything new just because you're adding a new employee. Security, as you saw in Jamf Security Cloud, is not difficult. We have the app switcher. You just go switch to the Security Cloud, configure what you need. It is connected to your Jamf Pro instance, and then it will enforce everything that is wanted and needed on the devices. Yeah, Android is possible also, that we find in the Jamf Security Cloud. So if you have a couple Android devices laying around and you want to manage them as well, then you can just go to Security Cloud and add them there as well. For everybody who's maybe now using Jamf Pro for macOS, but iOS on a different platform, you've probably seen it at WWDC. It's super easy to now add your iOS devices to Jamf Pro. So if you're interested in, hey, let me try a couple of devices, or maybe let's say we move everything to Jamf Pro. Obviously, it would be possible to do it the other way, but we're not talking about that. So once you move everything to Jamf Pro, you can do it in Apple Business Manager since macOS 26 and iOS 26. The cool part about here, you don't need to erase the devices. And if you followed the news about it, then you already know this, but I just want to point that out, that is really a step forward. Because if we had customers moving to Jamf, there was always the blockers, like we don't want to delete all our devices. What do we do with backups? What do we do with personal things on the devices? What do we do with iCloud backups? And so on. So now, with this new addition in Apple Business Manager, we have the chance to get devices moved into another MDM, hopefully into Jamf Pro, and don't have the device to be wiped. With that, I'm going to go first to thank you. Maybe I should have put that slide first. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time. And we do have time for questions if you have some, or if you want to ask something. Yes. Wait, I'm coming to you. I don't even see you. Where?
For your group.
Oh, there.
For your groups, you had. For your groups, it showed that there was STAD groups and there was also the smart groups. Can they coexist?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to repeat, can smart groups and static groups coexist? Easily answers yes, and actually I would encourage it, because you probably, once you set up your devices, you're going to start with your static groups, say marketing, support, sales, and all the devices in these groups go into your from your Apple Business Manager, you get the serial number, they go to the static group. And then later on we use the smart groups to deploy extra settings, updates. Or if you say, hey, I know long time ago, Pokemon Go was a hip and everybody wanted it on their device, you can use your smart groups, search the devices that say, hey, who has Pokemon Go installed, and then just block it or hide it so people can't use it anymore. Any other questions? Oh, okay. Coming to you in a second.
Just a weird question. Are managed Apple IDs a requirement in this process, or can consumer-grade Apple IDs, like set up by the user individually, would those work with this environment?
Correct, yeah. So, correct. You can use all three options: managed Apple IDs, no Apple IDs, or private Apple ID. You could also combine it, that you say marketing is allowed to use private Apple IDs, CEO only can have a managed Apple ID, the intern doesn't get an Apple ID. So all three combinations possible at the same time.
I just wanted to ask a bit more about the Jamf Trust app that you just briefly touched on. To sign into that, is that just via like a single sign-on that you have for the platform, or can you use other methods to sign on, like Microsoft Entra, I think?
Yeah. So, question about the Jamf Trust app to deploy security on the devices. You can do it with a single sign-on, but actually it also works without an MDM, because the company that built it was not an MDM company that then joined Jamf later on. So they actually built it the way that you could just deploy or install the app from the App Store, and then they have a link or they have other configurations that you just have to manually put into the app, and then the app works. So you do have either the MDM side to deploy it and have credentials, let's say, or you can do it without an MDM as well.
Not sure if I missed that part, but how do you enforce like compliance policies if there's no option within mobile devices part, like regular compliance. Like for example, if I want to enforce iOS minimum iOS version to X scope, how do you do that, or what's the best way to do that?
The easiest way would actually be not via the Jamf Security Cloud option, but via smart groups if you talk about iOS updates, because the smart group will look for every device that is not on the latest or 2 versions or whatever version you want. And then the smart group would enforce the update via our blueprints within Jamf Pro. So you don't need the Security Cloud for these things. Same with apps. You can say, hey, we're using Outlook, but nobody's on the newest version, so I want to make sure everybody is. Your smart group will tell you which devices are not. You use the smart groups and update the app. Yeah.
So what does the enrollment process look like for mobile devices if, first off, we don't have the devices in Apple Business Manager, and we don't have managed Apple IDs?
Okay, you don't have Apple Business Manager, then you're going to use user-initiated enrollment. That's how we call it. It's a link that you have to prepare via email. Actually, I mentioned Jamf Now in the beginning. In Jamf Now, you have a QR code, so you could build your own QR code as well. The end user then has to set up the device manually, completely through Setup Assistant. Once their device is set up, they go to Safari, type in the link, or take a picture of the QR code, and then add the device manually via your SSO, for example, so that you already know which user it is, to your MDM. So the thing why I didn't really talk about it, because I wanted to automate as much as possible, and this is really tedious, and a lot of times IT then has to do it, go through the complete setup assistant, and if you have 20 iPhones, and you sitting there all day long going, set up 20 iPhones, then adding 20 users to it, then they're in Jamf, and then they get their configurations. It's just not fun. So I would recommend do Apple Business Manager. I know there are countries in the world that don't have it. Apple Business Manager, for example, at this point. But if you're in one, please try. And if your devices are not an Apple Business Manager, try to use Apple Configurator, which is an Apple app, to get your device into Apple Business Manager before you set up the device. It's in the Wi-Fi setup. There you go, use Apple Configurator and brings this to Apple Business Manager. Then you get the automation. What was the second part of the question? There was more. Oh, yeah. Then you can add your managed Apple ID manually to it. You could also have both of them at the same time. So yeah.
This kind of segues off of that same question, but currently we have about 600 of our phones enrolled into Intune, and one of our initiatives has been to migrate those over to Jamf. There's been some concerns about not necessarily wiping the device, but I believe our Jamf rep told us that if there was any apps installed through Intune, those would be removed, and they're also signed in with a variety of Apple IDs. Some of them are their corporate addresses, some of them are their Gmails, so there's a lot of concern about those being forced off or lost or anything of that nature. Do you guys have like more documentation or anything like that available for specifically an Intune to Jamf migration?
Yeah. So specifically, this is interesting because I showed you on the last slide that within Apple Business Manager you can now migrate to another MDM, but obviously that came out 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and before that we had customers moving over. So our services team actually has an app called Jamf Migrate that would tackle that. So Jamf Migrate would be part of it. The app thing is, if the app is installed via Apple Business Manager licenses, device-based, then it will most certainly always lose the data because it's device-based. It depends on the app if they save in some other cloud, but if it's an app that's locally saved the data and it's not device-based, it's not bound to an Apple ID, then the data will be lost when you move it. Yeah, and then it will be probably saved somewhere else than device-based, so could work. But I would look into Jamf Migrate. Yeah. Oh, I'm coming back.
What's the minimum version of iOS that's needed in order to use the Jamf Migrate capability? Because we have some that are slowly catching up, but I know it's a new feature, it seems like.
Okay, that's a good question. So minimum, let's start with the easy part. The minimum, if you do it in Apple Business Manager, is iOS 26. So I think on Jamf, I have to look it up, but it should be, we always like 2, 3, 4 versions that we still allow. So if you are on the iOS 14, I would say, which still should work, but I would need to look it up to be precise.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I'm also in the position of moving from Intune to Jamf, and I was just going to ask what the user sees when the process initiates.
Yeah. So what do you see? If you use Jamf Migrate, you actually have, Intune will install Jamf Migrate on the device. The end user goes to the app and then gets guided through unenrolling the device actually out of Intune, then enrolling it manually with the enrollment link we talked about, which is embedded in the app, into Jamf, and then all the settings will come back.
Is that user-based enrollment?
Yeah, at that point it's user-based enrollment, correct. Correct, and that's the point. They could remove the profile. They could also stop halfway. They're like, I don't know, they get a call why they're migrating the device. Maybe they get a call on a different device or whatever, and then they never complete it, and then you kind of lose the device. So that's why the new version with Apple is where you can't stop the process, and it will bring the device over easily.
Can you still unenroll it?
You can't not unroll it then, because then it's Apple Business Manager, and that will prevent unenrollment. Correct. No worries.
The managed app configuration is basically settings that you post into the app on Jamf config. Is that correct?
Sorry, say the beginning again. Sorry.
Managed app.
Oh yeah, managed app configuration. Okay.
Yeah.
So on managed app configuration, you go to the app tab in Jamf, you select the app that is possible, and there's the tab called app configuration, and there you copy paste whatever the app can read. And you have to figure that out from the software developer, because for example, self-service reads different things than the Outlook app. So you would need to go to Microsoft website, they probably will outline what you need to type in and which combinations for the Outlook app to read the configurations. Yeah. In the end, it's an XML file. But yeah, you need to know what to put in. Okay, I think that's all the questions. Thank you, really interactive. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for spending the time with me. I will stay here if you have more questions for a couple more minutes, and otherwise, enjoy JNUG.